So this is Dan Goldman. He's upset about wealth inequality. And so he's got a new way to fix it, and that is by taxing the rich. But the problem with taxing the rich, of course, is that the rich don't take most of their income, much of their income, in actual salary payments. Most of their money is in stocks. When they sell the stocks, they have capital gains, but a lot of times what they do is they'll get loans on those stocks. And then they'll live off of that. They got to pay an interest rate on that. They got to pay the loan back, all that stuff. But he's got a way of, like, this is how we're going to solve the problem. Because these people have been evading income taxes, and we're going to find a way to tax them. So I want to go over his video, which honestly has a bunch of kind of like head-scratching moments in it that I just wanted to point out.
Wealth inequality has skyrocketed over the last 30 years as people with assets see their wealth grow.
All right. Now, I'm 7 seconds into this video, and I have to point out, I don't know if it's just through the truth or autism or what it is. He's talking about wealth inequality and puts up a chart of income gains. Income gains at the top. Percentage change in income after transfers and taxes since 1979. It's not as if the wealth chart would be that much different or would destroy his point. He's talking to me about wealth going up and he's presenting an income growth chart, and I'm just...
As people with assets see their wealth grow and people who are wage earners see their wealth relatively decrease.
Now, this is a great one that they do right here. The people at the top, they're seeing their wealth grow. And the wage earners, people who are wage earners, are seeing theirs relatively decrease. Now, what he means by relatively decrease is that over the same time period, the top 1% went up 300%, and the bottom 20% went up 132%. So because the wealth of the top went up more than the wealth at the bottom, that is a relative decrease. Now, that would make sense if every time, what does that matter is my first question. Who cares? I just got a raise at my job. That's awesome. Can go pay for this over there. I can go see one of the last movies to ever show in theaters. That's going to be fun. I can help towards my rent. And I'm like, oh, no, wait. That other guy over there got a bigger raise than I did, which means my income just relatively decreased when compared to that person's. What does that even mean? No, they all went up. The chart he's showing says they all went up. It's just the one at the top went up more than the others, but they all went up. That's not okay. That's just not okay with him. Since the one of them went up more than the others, that means relatively the other one's decreased. What does that even mean?
See their wealth grow and people who are wage earners see their wealth relatively decrease. That is unacceptable in the country that has the greatest economy in the world. And one way that this wealth inequality has dramatically increased is because the billionaires are not paying their fair share. The top 25 wealthiest people in America pay an effective tax rate of 3.4%.
Not true. This is I don't know how long this whole, the effective tax rate, but this thing came out calling it a true tax. I remember this sort of started coming out around the COVID times. I don't know if it's been around for a long time, but ProPublica started posting this thing called the true tax. And essentially the true tax is if your wealth went up a bunch, they counted that as your income. And then they take whatever money you paid into the government that year and did that as a percentage of how much what they call your income went up. And they say that's what your true tax was. But that wasn't your income. That was your wealth in the assets that you hold, like the ownership of a company that you started or of a company that you own, something that you've invested in, or maybe it's a house, something like that. Well, you don't do this for everyone else. My effective tax rate is X. on the income of my household, and we didn't put, well, here's how much our house increased in value over the last year, and so here's the true tax rate I paid. No, because I didn't take in any money from the fact that my house got more valuable.
Elon Musk is at 3.3%. Jeff Bezos is 1%. How do they do it? They do it because they borrow tax-free against their assets, against their stock. So they get all of this cash that they can use without paying taxes on it. Well, that changes today. Today, I introduced the Robinhood Act, which would put a 20% tax on any loans that are taken out against assets like stocks, art collections, or other trusts. This is the way that billionaires are going to pay their fair share, and it will generate.
All right, before we get to what it's going to generate, because that's when I want to start laughing about this. Yeah, they borrowed money tax-free that they had to pay back, and they had to pay an interest rate on it. Now, some of them, they borrow the money generally just to live off of, but since you're paying an interest rate on something, you're going to have to make more money off of whatever it is you're taking out that loan to pay for, which means you got to make some investments. You got to make some smart choices with that. Really big example of someone doing this is how was Twitter purchased by Elon Musk. He borrowed money off of the value of his Tesla shares. Essentially, he put those up as collateral, was able to borrow money off of that. Now, you charge a 20% tax rate on that, then what you'll find very quickly is that people are going to have to start selling off the assets because you got to pay back the loan. You're going to get a 20% hit on what you take out. And so you're either going to have to be way riskier on what your investment is, you're going to be way pickier on what your investment is, or you're going to have to be so conservative that your investment is a sure thing that you can make back that money plus the 20% tax rate that you had to pay when you took out that loan, or you're going to have to sell off some of your assets, which if these people have to start selling off some of their assets, which is the ultimate goal of all these commies in Congress. The ultimate goal, and this is a rich commie too, the ultimate goal is to get all these people to sell off their assets so they're no longer owning these corporations. Like, that's what this leads to. If you can't make that 20% tax rate you had to pay, well, then you're going to have to sell off some assets to pay that. Or if you got to get the money, you're going to have to sell out, without getting the loan, you're going to have to sell off some of your assets to get the money. The ultimate goal is to get them to sell off the assets. And that you might think, well, that's great because they're going to have to sell the assets off to other people and whatnot. It's going to have a pretty big downward effect on those assets, which, by the way, a lot of people are invested in those assets, not just them. People only focus on the rich people. People's 401ks, IRAs, pension funds, things like that are all invested in these corporations as well. They all expect to earn a return because they're all building towards their retirement. What I see here is just a downward movement to where we're all just dependent on social welfare schemes because you, at the end of the day, you're like, oh, screw the market. I don't care if the market goes up or not. Well, okay, well, there's a lot of people whose retirement depend on that, y'all. Let me play you the next part. This is the best part because we can make all the annoying economic libertarian arguments about how terrible this is. First off, taxation is theft, and so I don't want these people to have to pay a tax on that. People think, well, it's just not fair. They're able to take out these loans, and then they don't have to pay income taxes. Well, income taxes aren't fair. They found a way to get around them. Good on them. I'm happy for them that they found a way to get a smaller percentage, I guess, stolen from them, if that's the way that you want to look at it. We should all find a way to do that, in fact. And so if you want to go after the unfairness, maybe go after the unfairness of the income tax itself and not try to bring other people into the unfairness of it all with you. But then they make the argument, well, we got to do all these things and the government's got these massive deficits and we need Medicare for all and Social Security needs funded and all this stuff needs funded. Okay, well, I think the government should do less things. It's another problem we could solve. Get people out of the income tax unfairness by not charging them the income tax first off. All right, that'd be a good start. And also stop having the government do so many gall-darn things or dadgum things, however it is that you want to say it. But whatever, let's get away from that economic argument of how bad this would be for the economy as a whole, for them to find ways to steal 20% of that income and then waste it. They're gonna waste half of it and they're gonna blow the other half of it up. He's got projections for how much money this is gonna bring in. This is life-changing. This is good stuff. Like this is what we've been missing. He's gonna make the billionaires pay their fair share because everyone's been saying we got all these problems because the billionaires aren't paying their fair share. Well, he's found a way to get the billionaires to pay their fair share.
And it will generate nearly $300 billion over the next 10 years.
Whoa. $300 billion over the next 10 years? I don't have a calculator out right now. But that's like $30 billion a year? And you're telling me that getting the rich to pay their fair share, we're finally going to get that? Is that it's going to be $30 billion? That is, sir, that is less than 2 days worth of expenditures for the U.S. government. My God, we spent almost that much defending Israel from Iran earlier this year. Think about how the comparison of how much money we've sent to Ukraine or any of the other dumb things that we've spent money on, all sorts of things. Okay. $30 billion a year is what we're missing from the billionaires right now. That's why we have this financial catastrophe. Okay, if he wants to take the $30 billion and put it towards the debt, I guess we got to put money towards the debt or towards the deficit so we borrow less money. But here's the annoying part the annoying thing that these people always do. Elizabeth Warren does the same thing. Bernie Sanders does the same thing. They all do the same thing. We're running close to a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're going to be paying more on interest than we're paying for the military, I think, by the end of 2026. I don't know when exactly that cross happens, but the only thing to stop that from happening is going to be if we drastically increase the military budget. And I think the NDAA came out last night or today, and so we might be talking about that tomorrow. But instead of increasing these taxes to try and pay towards the deficit, so we're not paying so much in interest, so we're not borrowing so much money, so we're not inflating away our currency, they want to do this, and then they want to find new things to spend that money on. Like he says in this post, we're going to have revenue to pay for universal child care and pre-K and more. He even says and more. Not one mention of just putting it toward the deficit. Not one mention of putting it toward the debt. So any new money they talk about taxing right now, they never think about putting it towards the deficit. At least Republicans somewhat think about putting some of the new tariff money towards the deficit or towards the debt. They still want to use some of the other parts of it for bailouts and stuff, but at least when they bring in more theft, they're like, and we have a deficit problem, and we need to do just a little bit about that, the smallest amount that we can. We need to do that. Maybe someday in the future, in 3 years, we're going to do that. But no, when these people find a way to bring in more money, it means more programs. And that is just, it's disappointing, to say the least.